Hi and welcome to another edition of Willys Garage Norway. This is part 2 of the Roubo style split top workbench build. In the first part of this series I showed you how I designed and drew the bench in Fusion 360. Now I have to make the design a reality, so in this second part of the build I will show you how I prepared the boards for the two tabletops and the glue ups needed to get them finished. The tops are going to be made out of 2 by 6 inch pine or regular construction wood. After buying the boards, I used the miter saw to cut them all to length using a simple but effective saw stop. Then I stacked them with air around every board and let them sit to dry for a couple of weeks. This makes the drying process more consistent, so the boards don't bend in any direction, or evenly in every direction. After the drying period of 2 weeks, I used the table saw to straighten the 2-inch edge of the boards. I looked down the sides of the boards and figured out what side was the most straight, and the straightest edge I used against the table saw fence to strip down and straighten the other side. The second time I used the edge just cut against the table saw fence and cut the other side straight. This gives me 2 straight edges, and I stack the boards as before and let them dry for a couple of more days. After drying for a couple of days, I took out the jointer to level one of the 6-inch sides of the boards using the same method. Looking down the board to find the edge that is the straightest. This side was then flattened with the jointer, taking as many passes as needed to get a consistent joint down the whole side of the board. When flattened, I put a cross on the flattened side just so I would know which side to place it into the thicknesser later on. When I had completed the jointing process on every board, I transformed my jointer thicknesser into, you guessed it, a thicknesser. And adjusted the height needed for my boards. Before starting, I made sure that the cross marked on the flattened side was pointing down towards the bottom plate, since the jointer blades cut the boards on the top. This secures me a flat surface down towards the flat guiding surface of the thicknesser. I had to repeat this on every board on the same height before adjusting the height and repeating it on all the boards again. I did this until I saw that the whole side of the board was cut in the thicknesser and until I saw no highs or lows in the wood. I measured the thickness of the boards once in a while just to make sure that they had the same measurement. This secured me that all the boards were square, flat and of the same width and height. After I had done multiple passes and I was confident that they all were squared off, I measured the width of the boards. They all turned out to be 3.8 centimeters, that's approximately 1.5 inches. In the original design in Fusion 360 I used a width of 3.5 centimeters, approximately 1.4 inches. On the benchtop planks. You have to watch part 1 of this series if you want to see how I made the model of this bench in Fusion 360. Link in the description and in the corner of this video. I calculated that if I used a width of 3.8 centimeters on the benchtop planks, I could use 11 instead of 12 boards in each of the benchtop halves. So I changed the measurements in Fusion 360 to reflect the new plan and thus ended up with less boards in each tabletop. I also wanted to make the center boards thinner and I also had to change the mortises for the legs. Now back to the build. I had some straight pieces of scrap wood that I covered with some packaging tape so I could use them as a straight angle base for the glue up of the two benchtops. I laid out all 11 pieces of one top and figured out the best direction of them. I also made them have opposite grain direction to counter bending and cracking later on. I had some more scrap wood to use on the improvised straightening clamp apparatus. To help me align the glue up, I wanted to use biscuits in the glue joint using my biscuit jointer. Since my thicknesser only has a width of 20 centimeters, that's approximately 7.9 inches, I can't glue the whole benchtop together at once, so I numbered the boards from 1 to 11 and made crosses on the sides that would hold the biscuits. I set the height of the biscuit jointer to maximum to get as close to center as possible. Then I lifted up the first board and made biscuit slots under both the lines I marked before. On the first board I made sure to only make a slot on one side because the other side is going to be the outer side of the benchtop. The process was repeated on all the boards, making biscuit slots on all the cross marks. Before I glue up, it's important to vacuum and get rid of all the wood dust and bits. I screwed on some scrap wood on one side of the improvised straightening clamp apparatus and proceeded to start the glue up. Added a lot of glue on the first board and used a silicone brush to get glue all over the surface. Added a biscuit to both the biscuit slots and placed the first board on top, making sure that the corners and edges was flush. Then it was a matter of repeating the process, laying the next board flat and adding a lot of glue, then making sure all the surface is covered using a silicone brush, placing 2 biscuits in the 2 biscuit slots, placing the boards next to the previous one and making sure the corners and edges are flush. During the glue up I used a couple of clamps to temporarily hold the glued boards together. Repeat. Next board, lots of glue and brushing it out, placing 2 biscuits, putting the board next to the previous one and checking if it's flush. Now it was a question of just next, glue, repeat, next, glue, repeat until 2 pieces of one of the pieces of the benchtop was glued together. I even got so professional at this that I used a 2-hand action by brushing with one hand while pouring glue with the other hand. Now I could use some more scrap wood on my straightening clamping apparatus and place 3 boards on top and then use a clamp to pull it all together before attaching it with some screws on the other side. Now I got to use most of my workshop's clamps and I made this little art piece. I let the glue dry for a couple of days and a new haircut before I took the pieces out of the clamps. And here we have 2 of the benchtop pieces that is going to make up one of the benchtop pieces on the finished workbench. I repeated this glue up with the 2 pieces for the other side of the benchtop off camera. That's why you can see 4 pieces from now on. Time to prepare the 4 benchtop pieces to glue them together to a couple of solid benchtops. First I used the jointer to remove the glue on one side with lesser glue squeeze out. I made sure all the dents and grooves were removed and that took a couple of passes on all the pieces. When I was happy with the result, I made a cross with a pencil so I knew what side I had just jointed. Then I flipped the pieces and removed the glue squeeze out on the other side. On this side I didn't remove all the dents and grooves because the next operation was to transform my jointer into a thicknesser to get them all to the same width. My thicknesser has no outfeed table and that's a problem when handling big and heavy pieces like this. Therefore I had to make myself a simple and adjustable sawhorse to use as an outfit table of sorts. I did a quick sketch of a simple sawhorse and then made it out of some scrap wood I had laying around. The design is very simple, using a set screw on both sides in a slot that I bored out using the drill press and a drill bit. Finishing with a jigsaw until the set screws fit the slots. So, a simple adjustable sawhorse, perfect for my use. Maybe I have to make a refined design of a similar sawhorse in the future and make a video of it. When the sawhorse was done, I adjusted the height of it to align it with the base sliding surface in the thicknesser. This way I could feed the big benchtop pieces through the machine while the sawhorse made them not fall down on the other side. I think this worked out great. Now I could get all the pieces through and make the same width whilst also removing all the dents and marks on both sides. When that was done, I figured out which piece would fit which piece before starting on the glue up. I wanted to use my biscuit jointer on this operation also, so I made 3 lines using a square. This made it possible to make the cuts with the biscuit jointer in the right position on both sides. I had to make sure all the wood dust was removed from the biscuit slots. Now I could add a lot of glue using my silicone brush to apply it on the whole surface before placing the 3 biscuits. Next was to place the pieces on top of each other, removing all the squeeze out with some paper. There was a lot more squeeze out when I placed and tightened the clamps that I had to wipe away. The more squeeze out you wipe away at this point, the easier it is to prep afterwards. I let the glue dry for a couple of days and removed all the clamps, revealing 2 roughly finished benchtop pieces. The underside of the pieces was quite rough and had to be sanded a lot to get it to the point where I could mount the tops onto the base. When I sanded the underside, I focused mostly on the edge area because that was where the base short stretchers was going to be, so it had to be level. I sanded and sanded, and in the end I was happy with how the underside of the 2 benchtop pieces turned out. Now the top was finished and ready to get mounted on the base. The only problem is that I had no base yet. So this was it for the second part of my Roubo style split top workbench series, and in the next part I will show you how I build the base of the bench. If you hit that subscribe button, maybe you will be here next time. Meanwhile, you can get behind the scenes photos and info on my website, Instagram or Facebook. All the links are down below in the description. And I would appreciate it if you like, dislike or comment on this video. So, until next time, goodbye.